Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the Live Draft Assistant, Free Agent Finder, and Lineup Optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got paid contests coming to states near you, boosts all day, slashing lines all day. Check it out. That's a whole lot of fun on that platform. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 152 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. We've got UFC 307 this weekend going down in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we've got ACA. We got one fight night on Friday. We've got the Contender Series every week. Next week, we got Better Beef and Bivol. This month, we've got Ngannou Ferreira. For my picks on all of that stuff and more, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube and Spotify, not Facebook anymore. They keep flagging my page for absolutely no reason. That's why that website is only for scaring middle-aged people with articles about poisons that don't exist anymore. And check out my MMA DFS Value Picks article coming out on Friday afternoons. Come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord all day Saturday. Let's talk about UFC 307, what you're doing DFS-wise and sports betting-wise. And with me tonight, we missed the target a few of the last times. We've been trying to get him on again recently, and he is back tonight. Frequent guest co-host to Tap That. Give it up for Connor, Bones, Slone. Bones, how's it going tonight?
Pretty good, man. Glad it's almost Thursday, get close to the end of the week. And don't forget, Facebook is also a place to share fake AI photos that boomers think are totally real.
Did for them to flag my picks for ACA 180 and my article that I wrote and say that there was trademark issues, dude, all the bullshit that they have on Facebook, and they're about to shut down my the Facebook page I created for Tap That. Good riddance. I'm sure there's many other platforms that aren't just used to make a big post when your kid graduates from high school. So, Connor, this week we got UFC 307. Now, one thing I told you I wanted to talk about tonight, it's been a common thing. A lot of people say out there that the MMA fan community is the most toxic community in all of sports. Here's why I find that hilarious. All right. Because a lot of people that follow MMA don't know shit about other sports. So they don't know that Philadelphia Eagles fans are some of the most depraved people on the face of the earth. You see a lot of the same stuff that I do. Compare what you see with MMA. Obviously, there's douchebags and horrible people all over the place that just you have the anonymity of the internet. It's, they enjoy getting people riled up and they say horrible things. Whatever. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know if there's a solution to that ever for as long as time goes on. What do you think about that sentiment that MMA fans are so much worse than other sports fans?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I guess to kind of state my perspective, I'm definitely a fan of other sports, um, but I don't engage too much with those communities online. I try to limit my engagement online regardless, but I do think, there are a lot of toxic fan bases. I think there is something to be said about MMA's fan base and just MMA fighters in general. They have kind of a certain viewpoint on the world. So I definitely think it is very toxic. I would say I think the TikTok MMA community is a little bit more toxic than Twitter, even, which I think TikTok is probably the most just the worst out of all of the sites. So I definitely see what they mean. I think all communities are pretty toxic. So I don't know. It's interesting that you mentioned it though. I feel like I've noticed a lot more uptick in that recently. And I think it's just because of, it's election year. There are bots everywhere on Twitter and every social media site. So bot engagement really drives the toxicity up. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's funny because it goes along with the gatekeeper stuff where all the people who are apparently MMA fans are like, God, I hate other MMA fans. And it's like, but not yourself, right? You're perfect. Your behavior is absolutely sterling. The people that complain about stuff, it never seems to include them. But here's the other thing is that this is an individual sport. There's no teams that you can just blame things generally on. There's really not as much of blaming refs in this sport, and there's not a coach to blame. So
Hmm.
when people want to give shit or talk shit to somebody based on what they watched on a Saturday, it goes straight to the individual MMA fighters. And the thing is about MMA is I still think of the major sports, I think that the athletes at the top of this level are the most accessible. That's both a good thing and a bad thing. Like look how easy it is for you to like tweet at Terrence McKinney and get him to like engage with you or something like that. You can't do that with like, you know, any NBA player. You can't do that with NFL players. They're not paying attention to that. It's a great thing and it's a curse, unfortunately. And but also like it's not going away. There's no law that you can pass. There's no measure that you can take to make people not be assholes on the internet.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting that you mentioned that because I think some people would disagree with that. There are some laws in the UK right now that, and I'm not super caught up on UK politics, so everyone listening, take what I say with a grain of salt. But there are definitely a lot of people very upset that people in the UK are getting arrested for things that they say online. So I don't know. The UK is trying something. I don't really know how successful it is, or if success is even the right word for it. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see how things will evolve. Have you ever heard of the dead internet theory? I don't want to get too far off a tangent, but just look up if you don't know what it is, look up the dead internet theory. There's a couple good YouTube videos about it. Essentially, it's a theory that 80 to 90% of the content that is circling the internet is just AI generated, and people are just primarily interacting with bots and engaging in discussion created by bots. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting.
I mean, like that really came up to like during the whole like Drake and Kendrick thing because everybody
Hmm.
calls each other bots, and for all I know, it's two bots calling each other bots. I don't know. I don't even know what a bot is really, but I know that everybody seems to think everybody's a bot, and even if someone isn't, it like you can completely disregard someone's opinion just by calling them a bot. From what I've seen, so Jesus Christ, man. Like, there have been eras of the internet that are like different and arguably worse than this one. It always evolves and things always go back around and flip to one side and flip to another. MMA fans are going to evolve too. Again, this is a sport that is 30 years old. It is only I mean, really, like just a little over 30 years old. It's a little bit older than me and you. So, we evolve as people too. So I am quite confident that the sport of MMA is going to figure this shit out. But there's growing pains. If it means that, like we've talked about before, if the domino effect of all of this is that the UFC isn't around anymore in 30 years and that there's another league that is the top of MMA, so be it. If it's the survival of the sport, it's hard to try to mold the future of a sport as fans in the way that you want it to be when you're also trying to, survive and grow.
Yeah.
But anyway, because that was dangerously close to us getting very deep in the weeds. We got 12 fights for UFC 307. It is going to be in front of some rowdy Mormon fans in Salt Lake City, Utah, where they keep the concessions cheap. And that we can all appreciate in the year 2024. And we are going to start off with the main event, the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. Alex Pereira defending the belt, going for the record for the most title defenses in the fewest amount of days, previously held by Ronda Rousey. Shama, he is defending the belt against Khalil Roundtree Jr. Connor, according to the UFC's official light heavyweight rankings, Khalil Roundtree Jr. is eighth. I would wonder in the rankings era, I wonder if anybody lower has ever gotten a title shot. Although it might be Steve Erceg, honestly. Like, that's the only
Yes.
I can come up with.
Al Quinta. Even though technically he didn't
Was
make weight
ineligible.
against Khabib.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even think the commission would allow it because of how like I think they said at the time they were like it's because he's not ranked, and it's like what kind of horse shit is that? Like they used to they give title shots to Ultimate Fighter winners before. Like how anyway. Um, and above him in the rankings, Nikita Krylov, Volkan, Alexander Rakic, Jan, Jamal Hill, Ankalaev, who's supposed to get the title shot if he gets a win in his next fight, and then Jiri. So this is an unusual title fight, but this is one of the situations I think where the guy who got the title shot is the guy who was available and who said yes. So you can credit him on that. Khalil Roundtree Jr. is only the plus 360 underdog. Pereira the minus 460 favorite. Now, Khalil, to give him credit, all right, he's on a 5-fight winning streak. 4 knockouts in those 5 fights, 1 in the first round, 2 in the second, and 1 in the third. Got a split decision over Dustin Jacoby in a fight that I thought Dustin Jacoby won. The other fights that he won on that run were Chris Dawkins, Anthony Smith, Carl Roberson. Losses within the last 6 years to the likes of Johnny Walker, Ian Kudalaba, and Marcin Prochnio. A loss to Marcin Prochnio, January of 2021. Now, this is a situation here. We have seen guys like Chris Weidman. We have seen guys like Sean Strickland go into title shots as underdogs with a very unimpressive title run before they got that shot. And somehow it seems to make people more dangerous. I do not like people are coming up with their hot takes of why they think Khalil Roundtree can beat Alex Pereira. And I think like there absolutely that is a possibility. And if you're going Khalil Roundtree, I think you go Khalil Roundtree by knockout. I think like, you know, over the course of 5 rounds, that's too much time to give Alex Pereira to land his perfect shot. Roundtree by knockout is only plus 400. And I think that is very accurate for how likely that is for him. And you know, I think Khalil will land some good shots. We have seen Alex Pereira clipped early in fights, but Alex Pereira, his last 4 wins over Jan Blachowicz by split decision, and then 3 straight knockouts over Jiri, Jamal Hill, and Jiri again. Before that, knocked out Israel Adesanya for the middleweight championship, lost it subsequently. I think that Pereira by knockout is the right way to go, but like I think that there's also the possibility of like Pereira by decision too. You know, I think that is a greater possibility than Khalil by decision. In trying
Yeah.
to talk my way to like Khalil, I think that this fight would have to end within the first 2 rounds and by knockout.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back on, what you said about Khalil's ranking and him getting this fight, definitely I think it's one of those cases where I don't think Khalil deserves a title shot. His best win is against Anthony Smith, which, you know, not the best win on a resume, but I'm not upset about it. I love Khalil Roundtree. His finishes have been incredibly violent. He's a fan favorite. It's a good matchup, striker versus striker. So I think exactly like you said, he was the guy that said yes at the right time. So maybe not deserved, but not upset about it. I just the only path to victory I see for Khalil Roundtree here is a puncher's chance. And I don't like those odds against someone like Pereira, who's just an absolute sniper. But at the same time, we have seen Khalil Roundtree absolutely destroy a legendary K1 boxer before, so kickboxer. So you never know. But I think Pereira by knockout is probably the way to go. I think I don't really see Pereira by decision just because I think once he gets to the later rounds, I don't think Roundtree's cardio will hold up very well, and Pereira will find a finish one way or another, even if it's not in the first couple rounds. If you do want to, if you're feeling like it's an underdog night, Roundtree by KO, definitely the way to go. But I'm going Pereira. I'd say 80 times out of 100, maybe.
And Roundtree by knockout is only plus 400, which is crazy.
Yeah,
So I don't know. Like if I'm going anything, I'm going Pereira. I like him in DFS. I do think he wins this fight like 85, 90 times out of 100. And that is a true puncher's chance where almost every chance that Khalil Roundtree has is going to be by knockout.
it would be really funny if Khalil Roundtree hit like one of those side kicks to the knee and just blew Pereira's knee out. I think that's a possibility. I would hate to see that, but you never know.
And I do think, like, if I have a choice between over 1.5 at -132 or under 1.5 at +102, I think over 1.5 -132 is the smart way to go there.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I could see Pereira coming out in the second round and just flatlining him, kind of like he did to Yuri. But I don't know. It's an interesting matchup, and I'm interested. I'm interested to see how Roundtree approaches it. If he just comes out guns blazing, or if he, tries to fight at like Alex Pereira's pace. I don't know. It's interesting.
And I know Khalil has been very proud of his Muay Thai that he's been training it down there in Thailand. So who knows?
Yep.
If he tries to utilize something different, that might not be the smartest plot against Alex Pereira. Next up, we got the women's bantamweight matchup between Raquel Pennington, defending the title against former champion Juliana, the Venezuelan Vixen Pena. And also on this card, and we'll get to it because it's only a couple fights away, is Ketlin Vieira and Kayla Harrison, who's going to be watching the co-main event very closely. At least the winner will be. So, Juliana Pena, last fight 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, in a unanimous decision loss to Amanda Nunes. Her last win, December of 2021, in one of the greatest upsets in the history of the UFC at UFC 269 when she submitted Amanda Nunes to get the title. Raquel Pennington. Here's my, all right. Raquel, I will say, has 2 wins since Juliana's last fight, and against good competition for the UFC bantamweight division. She's on a 6-fight winning streak dating back to June of 2020. Surprising activity, honestly, from Raquel Pennington. Wins over Marion Renault, Tani Kianza, Macy Chiasson, Aspen Ladd, Ketlin Vieira, and Mayra Buena Silva. All of those except one were by decision. The last fight against Mayra Buena Silva, people were dogging on her so hard going into that one. And Mayra, I think, was the favorite going into that matchup. And she dominated her. 134-69 in the striking. And she didn't even have to use her typical Raquel Pennington thing. Although over the last 3 fights, she's at 114, 81, and 134 strikes dating back to the Aspen Ladd fight. The resume, you take away Amanda Nunes, and the resume for Raquel Pennington looks a lot better over the last couple of years. Not only that, didn't Juliana Pena have a kid after that last Amanda Nunes fight?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I saw something about, I should know. But that is a concern. If your last fight was 2 years ago, it was a loss, and then you have to take that time off, to do something that does a lot to you. It changes a lot of things. April of 2023. I think, let's see. No, this says she already had a kid. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
There was just for some internet lore. If there was some guy on Reddit that kept posting this picture of his mom because she looked like Juliana Pena, and she did look like Juliana Pena, but he posted it like a million times, and it became a meme. It was pretty funny. So just for your little bit of internet lore for this podcast.
And I think this is the tough one. Juliana Pena is the +140 underdog. Raquel Pennington, the -160 favorite. All right. Normally, I would expect that to be flip-flopped. But I think that this is kind of a reflection of, one, Raquel being the defending champion, but 2, Juliana's layoff. If it was Raquel +140, it would take me 0.5 seconds to come up with what I'm going with here. Over 4.5 rounds, Connor, is -260. And I think that's accurate. I think that, I don't know, who's the more likely to get a submission here? I would probably say Raquel. I would probably say Raquel is the more likely to get the submission. Just because Raquel has proven so difficult to submit throughout her UFC career. Now, anyway, I have always I've been a Raquel Pennington fan over this winning streak, and she even had her last loss is Holly Holm, January of 2020. The only 3 people that have beaten her, dating back all the way. I mean, her only 4-5 losses: 2 to Holly Holm, 1 to Jermaine de Rondemy, 1 to Amanda Nunes, and 1 to Jessica Andrade. Raquel Pennington has been solid as hell. She does not get the credit that she deserves. And Juliana Payne is the same way. Like, her 3 losses are Germaine, Amanda Nunes, and Valentina Shevchenko. So these are 2 fighters that, like, people give a lot of garbage to the UFC bantamweight division. I know people are saying, who cares about this fight? I care, Connor. I care about this fight. The 2-year layoff is a concern to me. And I think that, like, history shows that when you come out of a big rivalry, duo or trilogy, I think that it kind of deflates your tires going forward for matchups against other people. To get it up emotionally, to recapture a title after you won it in a huge upset, then lost it, and now you're trying to win it back. Otherwise, I think things about these 2 fighters are very equal. And I at least like that Raquel Pennington has been landing a lot of striking volume. I think that, like, the grappling can end up being a wash in a lot of these situations. I think both of them are strong. But on that alone, like, I think I'd have to say Raquel Pennington probably wins this fight like 60 times out of 100. I think I like her minus 160, and by decision is plus 110. Juliana by decision is plus 235. I think maybe Juliana by decision is like the better value, but if I'm going the most likely outcome, I'm going Raquel by decision. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think I agree with mostly everything you said. I think activity is going to be the key here. I think if Juliana Pena was more active and maybe a little bit younger, I would pick her all day, but I just don't think she's been active enough. I think what you said about, you know, coming out of 2 fights with the greatest of all time, where you have the biggest upset arguably in the history of MMA ever, and then just getting demolished. I think that takes the wind out of your sails, especially after so long. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Pena comes back even more fired up than ever. But I think I'm going with Pennington here.
And it says a lot about Pereira, like, to like lose the middleweight title like you did, and then go and then just take care of business consistently at light heavyweight, when we have seen Israel Adesanya kind of have that hangover effect at middleweight.
Yeah.
And so now, a fight that I know people care about at bantamweight, Jose Aldo against Mario Batista. Jose Aldo. I'm going to switch back and forth between Jose and Jose because I hear it pronounced 50-50 anyway. He is the plus 124 underdog, arguably one of the greatest champions in the history of mixed martial arts. Mario Batista, the minus 144 favorite. Aldo has won 4 of his last 5 fights. All right, Marlon Cheeto Vera back in December 2020. So it's been a lot of like time in between for him, naturally. Decision over Pedro Munoz. Decision against Rob Font. Coming off of a May 2024 unanimous decision at UFC 301 against Jonathan Martinez, a fight where I know he was the underdog as well. His only loss, Connor, since July of 2020 is to the current bantamweight champion, Merab. That happened August of 2022. And you got to go back to December of 2019 when he lost to a guy that wasn't a UFC bantamweight champion. So, Mario Batista, best win, I think pretty definitively, is Ricky Simone. And he thoroughly beat him January of this year, outstriking him 112-45. Other wins on this 6-fight winning streak include Jay Perrin, Brian Kelleher, Benito Lopez, Guido Canetti, and Damone Blackshear. Also wins against Miles Johns, losses to Trevin Jones and Corey Sandhagen in his UFC career. I think that, like, the striking volume, you got to be able to keep up with Jose. And Pedro Munoz and Cheeto were able to keep up with them. Rob Font outstrikes everybody, but still loses thoroughly. It's one of the most amazing statistical anomalies I've ever seen. He can land 300 strikes and still get 30-27. But Jose Aldo looked great against Jonathan Martinez. He looked sharp. He looked dangerous. I think Jonathan Martinez is still a really good UFC bantamweight with wins over Said Nurmagomedov and Adrian Yanez. I think that this is a fight specifically designed to get Aldo a meaningful win. It's far from a gimme. obviously. Mario Batista has had a fantastic run in the UFC bantamweight division. But I think if you're getting Aldo as the underdog, I think that this is like 50-50. And what you're betting against is not Mario Batista. You're betting against Aldo's age and the wear and tear. Because I thought that he was past that point when the Jonathan Martinez matchup happened, and he absolutely was not. Do I think that he still has what he had against Jonathan Martinez in him to deploy against Mario Batista? I absolutely do. Plus 124. I like Aldo there. Over 2.5 rounds is minus 300. Which makes sense. Aldo by decision is plus 175. That's where I'm going for this UFC bantamweight matchup. Connor, what say you?
Yeah, well, I love Jose Aldo, and I do like him as an underdog here. I think the only concern that I have, and it's a very, very big concern, is him fighting at elevation in Salt Lake City. I think that's where he fought Marab, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think that is going to hinder him a lot. I would put all my money on Jose Aldo on any venue outside of Salt Lake City or Denver or Mexico City, but that is giving me pause. I'm still going to take Aldo, and maybe it's just because I'm such an Aldo fan, and Batista's wins really don't impress me very much. Since it is 3 rounds, I think Aldo wins the first two. Batista comes back, has a strong third round, but Aldo 29-28.
And I don't know, maybe like based on that logic, maybe sprinkle a tiny amount on this fight being a draw. Maybe Aldo wins the first 2 rounds and Batista gets a 10-8 in the third and almost finishes him. Wouldn't that be crazy? I don't think that doesn't seem storybook, but it's definitely within the realm of possibility. It's just different, like when we saw what Marab did to Sean O'Malley and what Marab's pretty much done to everybody. He just wears on you, People might not like the style, but like it for the skill set that he has, it is fantastic for doing that to some of the greatest of all time. Next up, women's bantamweight matchup, Connor. The winner of this fight is going to get a shot at the UFC Women's Bantamweight Championship. And I know the UFC is hoping that it's Kayla Harrison. And it's Kayla Harrison versus Ketlin Vieira. Kayla Harrison in this fight is the minus 1,200 favorite. Dog. Ketlin Vieira. Let's talk about Ketlin Vieira first then. All right. So she has won 4 of her last 6 fights. And all right, I'm already seeing where this is coming from, right? Because when I go back, it's like the first win in that stretch is Sijara Eubanks, right? Doesn't matter a whole lot. Then you get 2 wins against people near the end of their career and well past their prime in Miesha Tate and Holly Holm. Coming off a win July of this year by unanimous decision, where she only landed 15 strikes with 3 takedowns against Pani Kianzad. And 2 losses in that time since February 2021 to Yana Santos and Raquel Pennington. Both by decision. All of her last 6 fights have gone the distance. Also has losses in her UFC career to Irene Aldana. Also has wins against legends like Sarah McMahon and Kat Zingano. You line up the legends that Ketlin Vieira has beaten, McMahon, Zingano, Holm, and Tate, it sounds pretty impressive. But really, over that 6-fight stretch dating back to September of 2020, it is the UFC women's bantamweight division why this is going to be essentially a #1 contender fight. Kayla Harrison. All right, so in PFL at 155 pounds, she was an absolute wrecking ball. And it took a long time for someone to be able to beat her in PFL. And I think what we always we're like hoping to see was Kayla Harrison versus Cyborg. That was the most realistic super fight that was going to come from that. And we were real close to it. And then it ends up, she doesn't end up, maintaining her run at the top of the PFL. And we're getting the conclusion to that in PFL this month. But Kayla Harrison comes to the UFC at UFC 300, gets a dominant win over Holly Holm. Outstrikes her 51-2 with 2 takedowns and puts her away by second round rear naked choke. I am thinking like, it seems crazy that Ketlin Vieira is plus 750. All right. Like if you sprinkle on Ketlen Vieira plus 750, I cannot blame you at all. This is a UFC women's bantamweight fight for a fighter that was fighting at 155 pounds for the longest time at PFL and has one fight in the UFC against the oldest version of Holly Holm that we have seen to that point. So plus 750 seems absolutely insane for Ketlen Vieira. On the other hand, to go by the eye test, when Kayla Harrison wins in the way that I was on Holly Holm at UFC 300 for all the same reasons I'm listing. You could go with Ketlen Vieira, and I was so quickly proven to be incredibly wrong. She tore a hole through Holly Holm. So Kayla Harrison, like inside the distance, somehow that is plus 105. And I think that is very viable. The only thing that gives me pause there is that Ketlen Vieira has proven incredibly difficult to finish, incredibly never been submitted in her UFC career. Kayla by decision somehow is plus 105. These numbers do not add up at all right now on Bet Online.
That really doesn't.
I'm torn so many ways. I think Kayla Harrison's going to be expensive in DFS. I think probably too expensive for my blood. But I think this is one instance where I would support hedging, where you put a little on Vieira plus 750 and you pick one between Kayla Harrison by decision or inside the distance. We've just seen so little of her against UFC competition that it has become so difficult to call.
Yeah, I mean, the odds are just so crazy that I think I agree with you. Just sprinkling a little bit on Vieira, picking a method of victory for Harrison. I think that makes sense. I do think Harrison wins here. I think she's pretty much going to be unstoppable unless Nunes comes back for some reason. So I'm looking at the lines here. Interesting. So fight to end by knockout plus 250, fight to end by submission plus 275. That seems crazy. Not even picking a winner, but just a method of victory. Interesting. I need to stop looking at these odds. I'm going to be too sucked into this.
This is a really tough one to call. Not in who I think is going to win, but just these are just tough circumstances. And Ketlen Vieira's resume only gives me more questions than answers, really. Kayla has only given us reason to think that she still has a UFC championship run in her. I think if she yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying I'm seeing Kayla Harrison by submission at plus 275.
Wow.
I'm taking that all day.
I think that's worth it, even though Ketlen has not been submitted. I think that it's a different
agree.
grappling animal that she's faced. She's faced Holly Holm. She has not faced Ronda Rousey in her career. The wins over the likes of Sarah McMahon and Kat Zingett, those are different things entirely. So I think there's barely any wrong answers in this one. I'm excited for it though. I think especially if Kayla Harrison wins, it is a level I'm interested to see her fight for the title. I think that she's a champion people can get behind. I don't think that the mystique was lost on her just because she lost one fight in her pro career to Larissa Pacheco, who's going to have the opportunity to fight Cyborg later this month.
Yeah, I agree.
Next up, we've got a UFC middleweight fight between Roman Dolidze and Kevin Holland. Big Mouth back in the house. People are so mad at him for what he had to say about fighter pay this week. For all I know, he's going to get booed everywhere that he's going to be. Anyway, Kevin Holland, who has fought, 11 times over the last how many years? Over the last 100-something? It's absurd, the amount of work and the volume that this guy has put in on a moment's notice. He's the minus 142 favorite. Roman Dolidze, the plus 122 underdog. Roman is coming off of a win against Anthony Smith June of this year at UFC 303 by unanimous decision. Landed 100 strikes. Got a takedown against Anthony Smith. The only two people that have beat Roman Dolidze since March of 2021 have been Nasruddin Imavov by majority decision and Marvin Vettori by unanimous decision. He's got wins over Jack Hermanson, Phil Halls, Kyle Dawkins, and Loriana Staropoli. The only other guy to beat him is Trevin Giles, and that is an unfortunate outlier. But then you got Kevin Holland. Only one win in his last 3 fights, but that only takes us back to July of 2023. This guy fought 4 times in the year 2022. You have to go back, here are the fights that Kevin Holland has been in since the year 2020, Connor. Anthony Hernandez, beat him. Win over Joaquin Buckley, win over Darren Stewart, win over Charlie Ontiveros, win over Jacare, lost to Derek Brunson, lost to Marvin Vettori, no contest to Kyle Dawkins, beat Alex Oliveira, beat Tim Means, lost to Hamzat, lost to Wonder Boy, beat Santiago Ponzinibbio, beat Chiesa, lost to JDM, lost to MVP, and then he's coming off a first-round armbar victory over Michael Alexijuk in a fight where he was like hurt, I believe, like early in the fight, and then ends up pulling off the submission. Those are all of his fights since 2020. Every time I talk about him, I'm amazed by it. Having said that, I don't understand why these odds are so heavily in Kevin Holland's favor. Roman Dolidze has not been hopping back and forth between middleweight and welterweight. And he's not a guy that like Kevin Holland, who when he moved to welterweight, it was like, okay, that's probably where he should be anyway. Even though maybe some of his biggest wins are at middleweight. Roman coming off the win over Anthony Smith, the only two people that have beat him at middleweight being Imavov and Vettori going back a few years. I don't understand why this line isn't like pick 'em. Honestly, I think that would be much more appropriate. I thought Roman would be the favorite. Roman plus 122 makes a whole lot of sense to me. I think like by decision or by knockout, I think are both reasonable for Roman. I think that like this is at least like a 50-50 fight. It's a little bit too weird. Anything with Kevin Holland just a little bit too weird. But Roman by knockout is plus 800.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. I like Roman straight up here. I think Kevin Holland may have a bit of an advantage striking, but his grappling defense is just not going to hold up, in my opinion. And I love Kevin Holland. I'm a huge Kevin Holland fan, but yeah, I like to lead day straight up here.
Yeah, I think we can leave that one kind of simply. Like, I just don't understand why it's like that. And I could see like Roman just wearing on him over the course of a few. And like you put Kevin Holland on his back. What have we seen, Connor? No answer. No answer.
Right.
For even guys that like aren't historically amazing at keeping people on their back. So if he gets beat up over the course of the first two rounds and hurt, if Roman is just careful enough, and I think that he can be, I think that it's his fight to lose.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Now we got a UFC welterweight fight between Joaquin Buckley and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Every matchup that they've put Wonderboy in lately just feels so fun. And in this one, Wonderboy is the plus 185 underdog, Buckley the minus 220 favorite. Reasonable. That is very reasonable. Wonderboy has only won one fight in his last four, and that dates all the way back to July 2021. The man is 41 years old. Amazing. Amazing still. And, you know, you got like 3 wins ago, it's like Kevin Holland, Jeff Neal, and Vicente Luque. But since then, he's lost to Gilbert Burns, lost to Belal Muhammad, to 7 takedowns to the current champion, granted, in Belal Muhammad. And then he has to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov December of last year at UFC 296. This guy does not shy away from the tough fights. It's what we love about Wonderboy. Joaquin Buckley is not 41 years old, Connor. He's only 3 years older than us. Born in 1994. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. And here's where it gets tricky is like, you knock out Andre Fiallo, that means almost nothing, you know, right now at this level for him. Beats Alex Morono by decision, knocks out Vicente Luque, and he's coming off a unanimous decision victory, an impressive one May of this year against Nursultan Ruziboev. The last 2 people to beat him were Nasruddin Imavov and Chris the Action Man Curtis. And this is a guy that's like really benefited from activity too. You know, he debuted in the UFC in 2020 and he fought twice in 2021, 4 times in 2022, twice last year, and already twice this year. I do not think that there is any reason to shy away from Joaquin Buckley in this fight. I think this is like very appropriately handicapped at minus 220. I think like this is still within Wonderboy's range. You know, it's not like he's fighting Shavkat. But I think that the guy's just a little bit too young and too dynamic of a striker. Buckley isn't an idiot with his striking, which is what it would kind of take for a guy of his youth and his strength and versatility and talent to get, you know, caught by Stephen Thompson. I think Buckley by knockout plus 350 makes plenty of sense, but I think Buckley might have to be a little bit more hesitant in his striking when it comes to dealing with Wonder Boy. So if this fight ends up going 3 rounds and it's Buckley by decision plus 125, I wouldn't think that that's crazy at all. I think that if you're going Wonder Boy, I think you go by decision plus 250. And I think that that's a pretty good value considering that he's only the plus 185 underdog.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a very clear path of how to beat Wonder Boy that's been established. And I think Buckley is strong enough and a good enough of a grappler to, take that path. I think every second that's on the feet, I think Wonder Boy has advantage. I think he's shown that he is still very, very sharp on the feet. But Buckley is just going to, take him down, hold him down. Unfortunately, Wonder Boy is just not that good at getting back up. He has decent takedown defense, but if you know how to chain it together, it's not going to be a good night for the 41-year-old Wonder Boy. As much as I love him, I'm taking Buckley here. I think.
And even if Buckley just does it once per round, I think that that's all that it'll probably take. And I think he'll
Exactly.
do it. And like it's kind of like back when like Buckley fought Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and Hassan was pissed that Buckley broke the no takedown agreement that they had, forgetting what the rules of mixed martial arts are, and that the winner gets more money and better opportunities. So, like, will Buckley do that if it comes down to? Because that's the other question. Like, some people we know that it, like Ian Kudalaba, even this past week, we know that some people their path to victory is going for the takedown. Are they smart enough, and do they have the fighter IQ to do that if it comes down to it? And I think Buckley does.
Yeah.
Next up, we got a women's strawweight matchup between Marina Rodriguez and Yasmin Lucindo. Lucindo is the minus 189 favorite. Marina, the plus 164 underdog. Lucindo coming on 3 straight victories after her UFC debut loss to Yasmin Uruguay back in August of 2022. Wins over Brogan Walker Sanchez, the Ultimate Fighter finalist. And it ended up like that's not an impressive win now that we look back on it, but she did thoroughly win. So at least you put a cap on it. Then she subs Polyana Viana August of last year, and she's coming off a unanimous decision victory against Carolina Kovalevich May of this year at UFC 301, outstriking her 83 of 42 with 2 takedowns. Lucindo was born in the year 2002. Marina Rodriguez, 15 years older, born in 1987. And if this was just like 2 years ago, if this was when Lucinda made her debut, Marina Rodriguez would probably be like a minus 800 favorite against Lucinda because she was on a 4-fight winning streak that included Amanda Ribas, Michelle Watterson, Mackenzie Dern, and Yan Xiaonan. Now, you've lost 3 of your last 4 against Amanda Lemos, Virna Jandiroba, and Jessica Andrade. Last time by split decision over against Jessica Andrade. April of this year at UFC 300. With the only win being a second round knockout over Michelle Watterson Gomez in the meantime. Has also fought Carla Esparza, Cynthia Cavillo, Tisha Pennington, Jessica Aguilar, Rhonda Marcos. She's fought a lot of great people here, but oh my God, a 15-year difference in a UFC women's strawweight division. That is the only thing that is keeping me from liking Marina Rodriguez at plus 164. This feels like jumping the gun a little bit for Lucindo. All right, because Carolina Kovalevich has actually recovered nicely from what was a very long stretch of losing over like a year period. She's now won 4 of her last 5. But that's the best win on Lucindo's record, either that or Viana. And she's looked good in those last 2 fights. But like Marina Rodriguez was just a couple of strikes or a takedown away from beating Jessica Andrade back in April. Everything like this feels like one where Marina Rodriguez feels like the obvious pick to me at plus 164, but it feels like I would be wrong for those reasons. It seems like these matchups between the older fighter who's faced tougher competition is on their way down in this division against a younger fighter who's largely unproven. It seems like these go many different ways, especially when they're main events of like a UFC Apex card. Where are you going with this?
I don't know. It's interesting. I think just given such a big age difference, I like Lucindo in it. But Marina Rodriguez, I mean, she's been very consistently good. I don't know. I think I'm just kind of going off of and the fact that it being at elevation, I think that will affect Marina Rodriguez a little bit more than it'll affect Lucindo. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, and like I don't know if I'm going Lucindo, I'm probably just going like by decision because this one to go over 2.5 rounds is minus 330. Marina Rodriguez, like Lucindo by decision is plus 100.
I
Okay.
like that.
Yeah, like that doesn't like Marina Rodriguez by decision is plus 175, so it's barely over like her money line anyway. I don't know. This is a tough one. This is like splitting all the like different pairs that you can. I guess I probably would opt for Lucinda. I just think like there's a lot less value there. Like it's hard for me to pick like the method of victory as much as Marina Rodriguez gets older, you know? So this is one that I would recommend to people. Like if you're going to stay away from some fights, maybe stay away from this one. I see the value of Marina plus 164, but I also very much see the value of Lucinda by decision at plus 100. That's about as good as it. That's about as much of a landing point as I can find here.
Yeah, I agree.
And next up, we got a lightweight matchup between Austin Hubbard and Alexander the Great Hernandez. Austin Hubbard, the runner-up to the season of the Ultimate Fighter, with the UFC veterans making their comeback. Austin Hubbard is the plus 140 underdog. Alexander the Great Hernandez, the minus 160 favorite. Hubbard finally got that win against Michael Figlak, April of 2024. It was like with so many of those Ultimate Fighter guys, like they got back to the UFC, but the things that were keeping them from winning for a long time were still keeping them from winning. And we're now seeing Hubbard and Cody Gibson finally start to get those wins. Not Roosevelt Roberts, but you know, we're even at these ages, we're seeing these guys like start to figure it out against some of these guys in the UFC that probably won't be around for a whole lot longer. But Austin Hubbard did win by unanimous decision April of this year. And obviously, like the sporadic UFC history, you know, like he had one of the most like one-sided beatings ever of Max Rothkopf back in June of 2020. That kind of started the whole thing about like corners throwing in the towel and whatnot. He lost to Ving Paschal. He lost to Kurt Holloway. Those were both within the last few years. Alexander the Great Hernandez. I have never liked him over the last few years. He's been active. I haven't liked him since like the Cowboy fight, I feel like. When I feel like again, one of these fights he came out and he like threw a punch early, I feel like. I've never liked his face. I don't mean to be like there I can't control that. There's some fighters you like, there's some fighters you don't. I've never liked Alexander Hernandez. He might be a very nice guy for all I know. But he's got wins over Beneil Dariush, Olivier Alban Mercier. He's fought Cowboy, lost to Drew Dober by second round knockout, fought Thiago Moy. Here's the real problem, Connor, is that Alexander Hernandez in all of his fights against guys like Austin Hubbard, he's done well in for the most part, except for these last two, you know, or the last three, Billy Q, Bill Algeo, and Damon Jackson. He's now lost 4 of his last 5. And the only win is a decision against Jim Miller back in February of 2023. He's fought so many of the best, you know, in this weight class, including Renato Moicano is another recent one.
Yeah, I agree. I've never liked Hernandez. I don't know. I think his streak lately has just been horrible. I think that's going to continue. I think Hubbard takes this one. I like him straight up in this.
You think that? Yeah, I think Hubbard does have enough of the dog in him. You know, like if Bill
Mhm.
Algeo and Billy Q and Damon Jackson, if you've taken lost all these guys, I think Austin Hubbard is at least worth the shot at plus 140. I
Yeah.
think like, you could split that kind of like by decision and maybe by knockout, but I think that's giving like that is giving Hubbard kind of a lot of credit still. Um, but like, I don't think you need to do that. I think you can go Hubbard money line plus 140, and I think that that's the best pick you're getting here.
Yeah, I agree.
Even if
Um,
I still believed in the talent of Alex Hernandez, he's just proven way too inconsistent.
yeah, I don't like him, and I think that's influencing my decision. But regardless,
Even if he hears this, I hope he doesn't take that too personally. Again, I know nothing about him as a person really, other than the fact that like every time I watch him, I just haven't trusted his fights. And something 4 years ago, for some reason, made me not like him. And it's stuck in my brain and it hasn't gone away.
Yeah, I think it was the Cowboy fight for a lot of fans. Even though Cowboy is an asshole himself, and I don't like Cowboy, but regardless,
But we didn't know that we didn't like Cowboy at the time, though. Like he was still he was still a hero at the time. I feel like it took more time to go on for us to realize that we didn't really like Cowboy's personality all that much. We're talking me and you. Other people still love him, I guess. And now we got a middleweight matchup. I'm really looking forward to this one too. Cesar Almeida and Ihor Potieria. Cesar Almeida in this fight is the minus 360 favorite. Ihor is the plus 285 underdog. Now, why have I liked Cesar Almeida so much when he's just a 5-1 professional and 36 years old? It's because of that kickboxing pedigree. A win over Alex Pereira in his career as a kickboxer. Fought him 3 times. He was a really, really good kickboxer before transitioning to MMA. And I think that in my memory, I feel like in this split decision loss that he had to Roman Kopylov, I kind of felt like Cesar Almeida won that fight. I haven't rewatched it in much time. So I could be wrong on that. Roman did land a knockdown and 5 takedowns. It was a split decision win. But I remember feeling at least pretty decent about his chances going into that decision. And really, if you want to poke holes in Cesar Almeida, you look at his win against Dylan Budka and you say, so what? Understandably. And his contender series win against Lucas Fernando, where he did look like it landed 71 strikes to Fernando's 28. He did get taken down 3 times. And, it's obviously against a kickboxer. You want to beat that guy, you take him down. And now Ihor, I had him against Shogun, and this guy's been active too. But they're using him for wins for other people. Ihor is a guy that I can't imagine that they wanted him to beat Shogun. They wanted Shogun to win that fight, probably. But it was just cruel to do to Shogun. This guy is 3-4 in the UFC, counting the contender series. He has 1 win in his last 4, and it's Robert Brishek back in February of this year. He has since been subbed by Nichelle Pereira. Other losses are to Carlos Olberg and Rodolfo Beato. So I think judging from the Carlos Olberg fight, I think that Kopylov is a little bit more of a puzzle in terms of his length and the power that he has. Ihor is just like a puncher's chance guy. He, even though he beat Brishek by decision, it was off the power of his best shots. And if that's the game you're going to play with Cesar Almeida, considering that Ihor does not have a single takedown in his UFC career, I see no reason to go Ihor. I see every reason to go Cesar Almeida. I see why he's the heavy favorite. If you're going Ihor, I don't even know what. I think you have to go kind of by knockout. I don't think he wins a striking matchup with Cesar Almeida over the course of 3 rounds. I think that Ihor comes in, he goes with his puncher's chance kind of stuff. Cesar Almeida being the more technical guy, this is kind of like a mini matchup of what some of Alex Pereira's matchups have been. But Almeida by knockout is minus 265. If you're going to value, go Almeida, I guess, by decision, plus 800 if he's being really careful. Because Almeida by knockout minus 265, that is a crazy number. And it maybe, put that in a parlay or something. I like Almeida in DFS. But every matchup with a favorite fighter over Ihor is always a tough one to find the values for.
yeah, I don't know. Eeyore has never impressed me. I think Almeida by knockout is what's going to happen, but I don't think those odds have much value in them. So I don't know. Maybe just Almeida round 1 KO. Odds might be good on that.
Yeah, Almeida in round 1 is plus 130. I think
Yeah.
that's logical. And then you go round 2, and that's plus 250. I think that those are actually the 2 best bets of the fight. Crazy.
Yeah.
And really, how many times more can you wheel Ihor? He's won just enough to hang around, and they can use him to pump up some people. I think that that's what they like about him. And next up,
Yeah.
Talk about some rough situations here. We got Ryan Spann and Ovince St. Preux at the light heavyweight division. Neither of these guys are any longer ranked as UFC light heavyweights. Ryan Spann is the minus 235 favorite, OSP the plus 200 underdog. Spann, 3 losses in a row to the likes of Nikita Krylov, Anthony Smith, and Bogdan Guskov. The loss to Anthony Smith was by split decision. You go back to 2022, though, and he has 2 finishes over Ryan Kudalaba and Dominic Reyes. He's beaten Misha Serkinov, and that was in this decade at the very least. Other losses to Johnny Walker. Damn, that's unfortunate. That's another spot. Light heavyweight. What a division right now. OSP, on the other hand, all right, both of these guys have a combined reach of 159 inches. So I think they're both going to have their backs to the cage as they're throwing the punches at each other. OSP, now the winner of 2 of his last 3 fights. One was against Shogun by split decision. He actually won his last time out March of this year by split decision over Kennedy and Chekwa, outstriking him 143 to 106 with a knockdown.
You want to hear the craziest part about that?
Yeah.
I had money on OSP by split decision, and I won. I swear to God, it was probably the highest bet I've ever hit in my life. I was so excited. I might, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going OSP by split decision again for this one. What are the odds?
OSP by split decision. Let's say this is going to be at the bottom of these, courtesy of Bet Online, and I know they have. All right, OSP by split decision plus 1400.
Okay, my phone's almost dead, so that's going to be my last pick of the day. But that's my lock. OSP by split decision plus 1400. Put your money on it and thank me later,
folks. Connor Bone Slone, the phone's about to die, but thank you very much for being here, Connor. We'll be talking all through UFC 307. Go charge that cellular device.
See you, Brady.
And guys, if I'm going Ryan Spann, I don't know. Inside the distance, like he's been known to catch those crazy. Like this is such a tough one to call again, too. Like flip of the coin, it almost feels like, right as I was about to lose all faith in OSP, he gets a win over Kennedy, who I remember as being like a pretty good favorite in that fight. Ryan Spann inside the distance, minus 250. Damn, I'm kind of on with Connor on OSP plus 200. And Ryan Spann's last few, like, I think that this, like, is maybe similar to Anthony Smith fight. I am kind of like an OSP by decision here. If you don't want to go by split decision, OSP by decision is plus 650. I think I have more confidence right now in OSP than Ryan Spann, even though Ryan Spann has had to fight some really tough fighters, over his last 3. Granted, you would just hope that and the Dominic Reyes win, is that more an indictment of where Dominic Reyes was at the time? It very well might be. This is another one where, like, unless you're going crazy and you're riding with Connor on OSP by split decision, this is another one where I maybe recommend that you steer clear. We got 2 fights left, and I'm going to cry maybe because this is going to be the retirement fight of Carla, the Cookie Monster Esparza, facing off against Tisha Pennington in the women's strawweight division. Carla Esparza is the plus 150 underdog. Tisha, the minus 175 favorite. Carla Esparza has not fought since November of 2022. But her last 2 fights were both for the title. She was on a 6-fight winning streak before then, including Virna Jandiroba, Alexa Grasso, Michelle Watterson, Marina Rodriguez, Yan Xiaonan, and Thug Rose Namajunas. Carla Esparza, the Cookie Monster, also known as the Rose Kryptonite, coming off a dominant loss to Zhang Weili. What you gonna do? That's what happens when most people face Zhang Weili. Hard to judge on Carla. It's not like she's 40. She was born in 1987. There are several fighters on this card that are older than Carla. Gonna be sad to see her go. She's been, she seems like an incredibly nice person. She's been a great thing for the UFC women's strawweight division. For as many great fighters that she's faced, I know people will have their complaints and say that she was in a lot of boring fights, but she held the top of this division down for a very long time. And to be the first champion and then to capture the title again that many years later against the same person, was an incredible feat. To be a two-time champion is an incredible thing for Carla Esparza. Tisha Pennington. All right, she's only fought once in the time that it was like since Carla's last fight. It was a loss to Tabitha Ritchie by split decision in a fight that a lot of people thought she won. May of this year, at UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Nascimento. Has a 3-fight winning streak dating back to Angela Hill, Sam Hughes, and Brianna Fortino from June of 2020 to August of 2021. Tisha's done a lot of losing, since February of 2018. She's 3-6 in that time. Oh, God. I don't know. I usually don't go storybook. But, you look at, if we're judging, I think Tisha's performance, her last time out against Tabitha Ritchie, I think is, reasonable grounds to have her be the favorite here. I do think that, the circumstances of this one, in any fight with Carla Esparza, is, a toss-up. She could fight the number 8 fighter in the division or the number 1, and she could get a close decision victory. In fact, Carla Esparza by split or majority decision is only plus 500. Which, you don't normally see that number that low. So I actually do think that that's a pretty good value here. Carla straight up by decision is plus 185. I'm going Carla here, for the same, in some of the same ways that Tabitha Ritchie was able to beat Tisha Pennington. If Carla, if she gets a few of her takedowns, if she's able to slow down her opponents to her pace and limit the amount of strikes that they land, unless your name is Zhang Wei Li or something like that, then and especially from an emotional standpoint, which I will try to stay away from, but even if this wasn't her last fight, I'd probably be saying the same things about Carla Esparza. It's this is well within her range, and she just ends up in so many close decisions. And depending on who the judges are, we might know early in the night if it's a Carla judging night or if it's not. For those reasons, Carla by decision. I'm staying away from both these fighters in DFS. Fare thee well, Carla Esparza. We're seeing a lot of the strawweight grades go. And, you were a pillar of the division for a long time. Best of luck to you in whatever's after your mixed martial arts career. And last up for UFC 307, talking about pillars or talking about veterans, seasoned veterans. Court McGee and Tim Dirty Bird Means. Court McGee, the plus 165 underdog. Tim Means, the minus 190 favorite. Court McGee on a 3-fight losing streak. Got knocked out twice against Jeremiah Wells and Matt Brown, May of 2023. Then he lost a unanimous decision against Alex Morono in a fight that, I think Morono had to, grab 2 rounds. And then, I remember specifically, I thought it was pretty close. And I had Morono as a favorite in that one. And I was surprised that he wasn't more favored. But then that fight ended up getting, kind of dangerous for him. So Court McGee still has, some gas left in the tank. He's almost 40 years old. He'll be 40 on December 12th. This is a guy that won the Ultimate Fighter all the way back in 2010 with a submission victory against Chris McCrae. And he hasn't necessarily fought the best of the best, but he has fought a ton of people. Kevin Holland has almost fought more people since the start of 2020 than Court McGee has. Now, he had obviously different health issues and things come up that prevented him from being able to be that active. His last win is by unanimous decision against Ramiz Brahimaj, January of 2022, landing 54 strikes against 32 with 5 takedowns to 1 and a knockdown. And then we got Tim Means. Tim Means, born in February of 1984. Somehow, Tim Means is older than Court McGee. So, he got subbed by Alex Morono May of 2023. Tim Means was on a really good stretch, from December of 2019 to June of 2021. He won 4 out of his 5 fights in that stretch against Thiago Alves, Laureano Staropoli, Mike Perry, and Nicholas Dalby. Then, now he's lost 4 of his last 5. To Kevin Holland by Darce choke. Max Griffin by split decision, a fight that I thought he might have won too. It was very close. It was as close as a split decision should be. Gets subbed by Alex Morono. Knocks out Andre Fiallo, and most recently gets knocked out by Eros Medic. Normally, oh God, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but It's a weird card. Me and Connor went back and forth on some very interesting, hard to call fights. What the hell, man? Like, I think that this is actually closer than the odds indicate. I think from what we saw from Court McGee against Alex Morono, the way he handled that fight, you would think Court McGee would be the one that looked helpless in that. And the Matt Brown fight should discourage me too. And Jeremiah Wells too. Oh, God. Tim Means has fought better fighters, over the last few years. I think Court McGee is reasonable at plus 164. What probably happens is it's probably Tim Means by decision, which is plus 135. And, Court McGee, I think is reasonable money line, but Court McGee by decision is plus 300. I think that's reasonable too. Both these guys are 40, man. This is another one. I'm giving you my picks for this. I'm telling you what I think about it. I think that this could end up being a split decision as well. Means by split plus 800, Court McGee by split plus 1,000. I think that's where you go with this one. This is another one where maybe save your money on this one unless you're sprinkling a little on some high reward stuff. Folks, that is it for UFC 307. Fun, entertaining, strange. I was looking for a weirder word, but baffling kind of card. We could get results all over the board on some of these fights. Fighters in their 40s. And I mean, for there to be a guy older than anybody in the Tim Means Court McGee fight, and for it to be a guy who's still hanging around where he's at for Wonder Boy, amazing. Folks, thank you so much for listening to me and Connor Bone Slone talk about UFC 307. This has been episode 152 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. Again, there's one this week. We got a bunch of awesome MMA and boxing that's coming up in the month of October. The Contender Series still going on. For my picks on all that stuff and more, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. No longer on Facebook because I don't know. I don't know who's running that website. And I don't know who's maintaining their ethical standards. But apparently they don't like people posting who they think is going to win, who's going to do well in DFS for UFC events, or who's going to win in a Russian MMA event that's happening this week. Check out my MMA DFS value picks article coming on Friday afternoons. Come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord on Saturday. Let's talk about UFC 307. We got more interlude episodes coming up from the world of the BYB bare knuckle boxing. I love that group of individuals. Shout out to Courtney Karen again, who was able to capture that title, the Police Diamond Gazette belt, after she was on that show. Congratulations to her. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Enjoy UFC 307. Peace.